So I want to go back in this video. So this is part 2 of this series. Does the Bible command a woman to marry her violator? And as I said in the first video, the short answer would be no. It doesn't command a woman to marry her violator, but it does command the violator to marry his victim, which is of course disgusting because the Bible is disgusting. But I wanted to go back just a little bit from where the last video ended. And I want to play this because I want to show. Hey, Nitty, what's up, man? Thanks for stopping in. I want to show the difference between these two passages. What he's trying to claim here is that this verse in Exodus 22 is parallel. It's the same as Deuteronomy 22:28, I believe. He's saying that Deuteronomy 22:28 simply means consensual sex between two adults. If that takes place, then the violator is to marry the woman he violated. But he's saying it's consensual. So let's play this a little bit.
The one we read at the end of last time, Exodus 22:16, it uses the English word seduce. The man seduced her, which is the Hebrew word patha, which was Strong's 6601. So if you look them up in a good lexicon, you'll see the distinctions. And so what I'm building a case for here is that some of the English translations, when they translate Deuteronomy 22 verses 28 and 29, specifically the NIV translation, the New International Version, again, with all due respect to the translators, they got this one wrong. Deuteronomy 22 verse 28 does not talk about somebody raping somebody.
Except that it does. It so clearly does. Listen to the difference in language, even if you don't go to the NIV and many others, might I add. Even if you don't go to the NIV and you just listen to the difference in language. If a man finds a girl who is a virgin, who is not engaged, and seizes her and lies with her, and they are discovered, then the man who lay with her shall give the girl's father 50 shekels. For some reason, the money goes to the father, which is just weird, but that's the Bible. And she shall become his wife because he has violated her and cannot divorce her for all of his days. Do you see the stark contrast between that language and the language of Exodus 22? Which is, if a man seduces a virgin who is not pledged to be married and sleeps with him, he must pay the bride price and she shall be his wife. There's a huge contrast in language here. It's not comparable. One is referring to what appears to be consensual relations, and the other is clearly referring to something that is forced. And this is further confirmed by many apologists who will take the road that it is translated correctly, but this was some type of protection for the woman because her virginity has been taken from her. So she's forced to be married as a protection because nobody's going to want a non-virgin because virginity was held up on this disgusting pedestal back in the day because God. But there's just such a stark contrast. And this is, so not only do apologists say that this is talking about forced relations, but many biblical scholars. So this is Matthew Henry. This was a comprehensive review of the Bible written in the 1700s, the early 1700s. Roughly 100 years after the King James Version came out. And this is what Matthew Henry, written in the 1700s, this is what he had to say about this passage. And mind you, he writes a lot. You can see, he went through every verse and tried to tell people what it was really talking about. But this is what he has to say about this passage. If a damsel not betrothed were thus abused by violence, he that abused her should be fined. The father should have the fine for some reason. And if he and the damsel did consent, he should be bound to marry her and never to divorce her. However much soever she was below him, and how unpleasing soever she might be afterwards towards him. This was to deter men from such vicious practices. Even this guy is saying that yes, this is referring to non-consensual sex. That's because the women, as in the Ten Commandments, are property of their father until they're released to the man. Yes, you're absolutely right, Nara. Everything in the Bible regarding women is disgusting, but especially the relationships between daughters and fathers. It's gross. I have two daughters of my own, and it's it's gross. I'll leave it at that. It's gross. What do you think in modern times? There's that thing dad say at weddings, priest, who give this woman dad I do. Yeah, yeah, even yeah, I don't mean teach their own, but even that's to me is it's weird. It's just weird. Like, no, it turns out that women are their own people. Daughters are their own people. They belong to nobody. Oh, and I would say especially not the father. It's just weird. It's weird. But yeah, so many apologists and many people who have done extreme in-depth Bible studies, such as this guy and many others, all agree that this passage is referring to non-consensual sex. I'll smack him for who asked me to do that. Yeah, yeah, like it's weird, right? That's a weird thing to do. Um, I mean, for whatever reason, it's common practice, right? You hear this a lot, like the father's giving away his daughter. Like it's weird, dude. It's weird. It's weird. But these two are taking the approach that the translators got it wrong. Which, if you look at the language between Exodus 22 and Deuteronomy 22, there's a stark contrast. This is talking about forced intercourse, but we're only 9 minutes into this 32-minute video, so they've already laid the cards on the table that this passage is simply referring to consensual sex, which it just isn't. So I'm curious what the next 20 minutes of this video could possibly be about, but we'll get into it.
It's dealing with a very similar thing as Exodus 22, verse 16, that talks about seducing. They go and lie with her. They had premarital sex. And so Exodus 22:16 and Deuteronomy 22, verse 28 and 29 are dealing with the same thing. Two people had premarital sex. They do not use the word force, do not use the word rape. And so the Bible.
No, they use the language of to seize, to take hold of. Why would they, if it's simply dealing with consensual intercourse, why would they use the language of seize and to take hold of, to violate? It's just dumb. It really is.
Bible is not teaching that a woman has to marry her rapist. What it's saying is that if they have premarital sex, they have to get married. That's what it's saying. If we just compare English translations and even do a little bit of homework looking at the lexicons, then you'll be able to tell the difference. So comment, Steve. There's any, because the reason I bring this up is because it's so egregious, especially to women that have been attacked in the past.
Doing these word studies is beneficial.
What's actually egregious to women is the absolute venom that is pouring from these guys' mouths. This is not what they're doing is egregious to women. What the Bible does is egregious to women. All right, let's go.
Sometimes, especially whenever you come to something that is that you want to look into a little bit deeper, look at the specific words that are being talked about there and what their meaning was in the.
Yes, look at the specific words. Listen to the people who study the Bible and translate it for a living, who dedicate their entire lives to it, and have come to the conclusion that this verse is talking about forced intercourse. They've come to this conclusion, but Glenn and Steve over here, they say no, 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 no. You've got it all wrong, scholars.
Original language.
And so we approach all of these things in our day from a sex-saturated society, and since we've totally lost the idea that premarital, at least the world has, totally lost the idea that premarital sex is a wrong thing, and that sex should be preserved for marriage, which is the Christian thing to do, it's the biblical thing to do, then we lose the seriousness of this. That's what it's talking about. We view these things from a view of our modern thing, and we've lost the idea of approaching it from a moral standpoint, that the man has an obligation to a woman if they have premarital sex. These principles here are actually truly built to protect the woman, to keep her from being taken advantage of. I have seen in recent times video.
So You got that exactly right, Nitty. Oops. Oops. Oops is right. In which, okay, in what instance is it to protect the woman? If it was consensual, how is it protecting the woman? If, yes, it is. I believe that this law was written in Deuteronomy 22 by an ignorant group of people who were doing the best they could given the times that they were living in. And they got it wrong. I will give them that. They got it wrong. I do think the Bible, by and large, of course, there are many circumstances where it's not the case, but by and large, they weren't a fan of forced intercourse. They held virginity on this crazy high pedestal. They were marriage, marriage, marriage. I don't think they were condoning it. I think they just simply put in place things that they thought were beneficial to a woman, but they simply were not. But so I'll agree with him. These laws were put in place to make an attempt, a failed and sad and disgusting attempt, but attempt nonetheless to protect women from being taken advantage of. Because if they lost their virginity in this culture, in God's culture, they became worthless. But oops is right. They were taken advantage of. They were violated. So they were to be married to the person that had violated them. Oops.
Testimony of women who bought into the idea that we can play around, men and women can play around before marriage, have all the sex they want, no consequences.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not an idea to buy into. That's a thing you can actually do. You can play around. You can have all the sex you want before marriage. Don't ever get married. Marriage is, I won't get into the marriage thing, but yeah, play around. That's not an idea to buy into. You do you. Just do it safely.
Play the field, just have fun. And I remember this one video that was online that this.
Hey, Ember, what's up? Same-sex weddings are fun. Either both want to get walked down the aisle or neither do. Yeah, I've been to a same-sex wedding, and oddly enough, it was actually officiated by a Christian who I've done debates with on my channel. I know this person in real life. He's a pretty good guy, but yeah, I've been to heterosexual weddings. I've been to same-sex weddings, and yeah, the same-sex wedding, it wasn't all ceremony and people, the choir is singing in the background. I went to an extremely Catholic wedding, and there was so much extra stuff that it just became boring. There was the person with the incense. I can't think of the official name for it, but he was doing the smoke stuff, and there was this like whoa stuff going on in the back. It was boring. It was weird. So yeah, same-sex weddings are, from my experience, pretty entertaining. Thanks for stopping by, Ember. Appreciate it.
This woman was about 35, 36 years old, and she was crying bitterly because of her past. And she was saying, 10 years ago when I was in my late 20s, I was playing around, I was having sex, we were having fun, but here I am, 35, 36 years old. The good men don't want me anymore, and I can't get a date, and I'm facing a life of not being able to be married to a good man. They're not interested in me. I'm probably never going to have children. This woman was crying through her tears saying this, and she was facing a life of growing old.
So none of this has to do with the verses in the Bible. This is him just saying, hey, don't, be a prude your whole life. Get married to the very first person that you had sex with. Obviously do the sex after the marriage and live miserably with them forever. That's what he's saying. Because, no divorce and all that stuff. But none of this has to do with the verses in the Bible, but also, if you're a woman, and mind you, he's telling a story about a woman because men can play around all they want, of course. If you're a woman and you're 36 years old and you had a lot of relations back in your heyday, and now nobody wants you, I guarantee you unless you're trying to find like some weird Christian dude, I guarantee you it's not because of the relations you had back in the day. There's something else that is repelling people from you. It's not because of yeah, you're exactly right. Remember, if they care about what you did 10 years ago, like what do you do? Like do you when you yeah, I mean you get it. There's something else. Let's be clear here. He's making this story up. He didn't talk to anybody. He's just making this up to try to sell his celibacy, Jesus, purity bullcrap. But yeah, I mean, if they care about what you did 10 years ago, they're probably not good people. And he's just making stuff up right now. But can we get back to that's what he I was just saying that there's something is going on in the rest of this video because he's already yeah, no, he's not, well, Frank Turk is books, but yeah, I'm curious what they're gonna say in the rest of this video. It's probably gonna be a bunch of anecdotes about how you should not have premarital sex because you're gonna burn in hell. It's all right, yeah, we'll keep going.
Old and being poor and dying alone. And she was crying about that. Well, that is the pain. If we see these laws here and people take them and twist them because of their agenda, and it ultimately causes the
That's a hot word. Their agenda.
problems that we're seeing today, which is people having all these problems because they totally ignored the biblical laws about sex. And if we just follow
That is true. That is true. People are having problems today because they ignored the biblical laws about sex. That is true.
these principles here, and again, it's not saying a woman has to marry a rapist. What it's saying is that premarital sex is a very serious crime, and we need
I agree with him. It's not saying that a woman has to marry her violator. It's saying that the violator has to marry his victim. I'll agree with him.
to purge that from our society and only have sex in marriage. And that way we end up with strong families, and we end up with less poor people, and we end up with less people in tragedy, and we end up with a lot more happiness. And so, Steve, that's why
Yeah. So I don't know if anybody's read Frank Turek's book. I was covering it in a series of mine, but it watching somebody read, turns out it's not the most appealing thing to watch. So I kind of strayed away from that. But I did read, by and large, the majority of the book, and with his language that he just used, I could definitely tell he's a Turkite.
I see such a tragedy today is because people take these things and say, okay, we can just ignore all these biblical morals, and it ends up having a worse problem.
If you come across this video, I ask you, please ignore the biblical morals. Please ignore them. Don't if two people are committing adultery, don't throw rocks at them till they die. Just don't do that. That's not a good thing. If your child is being unruly, don't throw rocks at him until he dies. Don't do that. That's definitely not a good thing.
Yeah, and we mentioned it last session, so let's mention it this session too, because listeners or viewers might.
Less people in charity. He realizes 100% of domestic abuse happens in domestic situations. That is true. That is true. Biblical immorals. Yeah. I mean, in the last video, I went through the parts of this, the entire Deuteronomy 22 in its entirety. This verse kind of starts, I think, at 28 towards the end. I think it only goes to 30. But if you go up, it says the most heinous things about virginity and stoning women to death. To be fair, there's cases where you kill the man too. But just outright murder for these, if you're in a committed relationship, hey, don't cheat on your partner, but also don't throw rocks at people until they die. Wait, if it's a crime, then are they willing to dish out the penalty to their kids? I missed what that's in reference to, Nitty. I apologize.
Not watched the previous one, or maybe haven't listened or seen the previous one either. You mentioned that it's protection for the woman. Well, people might say, well, what about the man? He gets to do whatever he wants. No, it's also a consequence to the man. Hey, you took this illegal action, and you're going to marry now, and you're going to start a family. And what it does is it puts him in, it's also not.
That's why I see such a tragedy today, is because people take these things and say, okay, we can just ignore all these biblical morals, and it ends up having a worse problem.
Yeah, and we mentioned it last session, so let's mention it this session too, because listeners or
I don't
viewers
think it went
might
back
not.
far enough.
We end up with strong families, and we end up with less poor people, and we end up with less people in tragedy, and we end up with a lot more happiness. And so, Steve, that's why I see such a tragedy today, is because people take these things and say, okay, we can just ignore all these biblical morals,
Maybe
and it
more.
ends up having a worse problem.
Yeah,
Follow these principles here. And again, it's not saying a woman has to marry a rapist. What it's saying is that premarital sex is a very serious crime, and we need to purge that from our society.
Oh, okay. Premarital sex is a very serious crime. Yeah. Yeah, you have to purge the evil. And it's weird that he's using that language specifically, purge the evil, because that's biblical language. If you go back to Deuteronomy 22, is it Deuteronomy 22? Yeah. So yeah, marriage violations. If a man takes a wife after sleeping with her, dislikes her, and then says that she's not a virgin, the parents are supposed to provide proof of her daughter's virginity. It gets really weird. Yeah, and it finds out that she is lying about her virginity. Then you kill the lady. You kill her. So right here, you must purge the evil from among you. You must purge the evil from Israel. So Nitty, I mean, I'm gonna answer that with a yes. They probably are. They probably would. If they found out that their children were having premarital sex, they would probably take rocks and throw them at their children until they die. It's biblical. It's biblical morals. It is. It's interesting that they just went on about this traditional marriage and this biblical family and all the stuff that he just said, and then goes on to say that the punishment for the man is starting the family. No, it sounds like they were a superstitious group of people who really thought that sorceresses and witches were a thing, and that it was evil, and God would command, you must not suffer a witch to live. You would kill them. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, that's can you, like I said in many videos before, um if you just take a moment to think about how silly this all is and how stupid it all is, and how very severe and real it must have been for the people of the time. I feel terrible for these people. But now, fast forward 3,500 years roughly, you can really see how silly this all is when you add a god into the equation. If you take the god out, this all makes perfect sense with an ancient people doing ancient, barbaric, archaic things. But once you add the god into the equation, that's when all of this starts to really crumble, because these are all God's laws for his people. This is the best God can do. Humans have learned better than what their God commanded. Wow. So he's taken the literal approach, as he should. Don't get me wrong. He's taking the literal approach because that's what they were talking about. People who are trying to speak with the dead and raise doing all the sorcery, wizard, necromancer type things. But he had to clarify it with they're not talking about people doing magic tricks They're talking about people doing real sorcery and real magic. He clarifies this. With other what now, good sir? With other. You heard it here first. Other gods. This Christian is acknowledging that there were, in fact, other gods. Which, how can you deny it, considering that other gods are mentioned in the Bible, but of course Jesus is the only God? It's all stupid. Yeah, lots and lots and lots of other gods. The they in the slavery apologetics, they went into how God would send how this God would send the Israelites to slaughter the Canaanites because they were sacrificing things to another god. There's this story where God God had another like a showdown with another god and they were like shooting lightning bolts and all types of weird stuff. Yeah, you're right. Lots and lots and lots of other gods. What are we talking about? We're, we've spent the first 9 minutes saying that the translators of the Bible got the passage wrong, and the next 9 minutes talking about the occult, marriage, family values, starting a family as the punishment. What are we talking about? If anybody wants to jump in, feel free. This is the degenerate society, not the society of biblical times. This is the degenerate society. Again, what are we talking about? We've gone from talking about how great marriage is to talking about how witches and sorcerers were condemned, and now we're talking about animal. I don't know. I really hope they're getting somewhere with this. I hope they're going through all of this to lead up to some point, bringing it back to the title of the video. Does the Bible command a woman to marry her violator? I don't I don't know where they're going, but what are we talking about now? So that does not logically follow. That is a absolute non sequitur. This guy created things. He deserves worship. That does no. That is again. What are we getting to here? The Egyptian what? Gods? Can't hear the vid. Uh-oh. Oh my goodness gracious. I did it again. Oh man. Okay. All right. So you just heard me blabbing on and on about nothing. Ah, I hate that so much. I'm blaming Ember. Ember, if you're still in the chat, I'm blaming you. If you never use StreamYards, I wouldn't use StreamYards, and I wouldn't forget to do that. I take no responsibility. I don't know how far back we got to go. So I'll recap. They go on about sorcerers and how God doesn't like them. They go on about how great marriage is, and then they go into that you shouldn't have intercourse. It is your fault, Ember. It is your fault. You should. Oh my goodness! I did this in another video too, and I wish it would. And it doesn't matter. It happened. That's live for you. He went on about sorcerers, how much God doesn't like sorcerers. He went on about the fact that there are gods, but there also aren't other gods. And since God created things, he deserves to be worshipped. It's really boring.
The first commandment was, I'm a jealous God. Don't worship any other gods before me. So here this sorceress person is doing it. They're in the midst of the camp. They're doing this, not doing it by themselves. They
yeah, it's Colonel Sanders. He's back at it again. YouTube punk. When I read that comment, man, I had literal tears in my eyes because I hadn't thought about it. And I wasn't watching the video when I read the comment. So I thought, it was like, at first it didn't click until I thought about it for like 10 seconds. And you hit it spot on. This guy is a Colonel Sanders, and he definitely has a plantation somewhere. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you hit it spot on. That was funny, dude.
entice others to get involved with it. And before you know it, it grows into something where they're being led away from worshiping God.
Right. And so the Bible has no tolerance for the occult. God has no dealings with it at all. We should stay entirely away. One of the terms that the Bible uses is a familiar spirit.
Yeah, except Leo's at least a pretty handsome dude. This guy is not.
These are people that regularly contact
But I see where you're coming from with that. Absolutely.
forces or voices or powers from that are supernatural, that are not of God, or any kind of casting of spells, or any kind of supernatural powers outside of God, any type of fortune telling or getting information from outside of ourselves and God.
Larry David.
The Bible universally, categorically condemns all of that, no question. And again, that's why the Bible here says, "You shall not allow a sorceress."
So as I was saying before, just to kind of tie it all together, they're condemning sorcerers. I really hope they're leading to some point, because what does this have to do with whether or not the Bible commands a woman to marry her violator?
To live. These are things we do not deal with. Then next, verse 19, whoever lies with an animal shall surely be put to death. Steve, I used to wonder why we would have to have commands like that, but given our modern degenerate society where there's somebody in society that accepts anything and everything, then it's really hard to get shocked anymore, and we actually need.
Yeah, you're right, Nitty. I noticed that the quality of their broadcast, of their stream, is pretty good. I mean, it's better than mine. They got a nice setup. They got the projector in the back. They got these big high quality mics with I can't remember the name of the connection. You know, yeah, the production value is not bad, and it's I'm curious. Well, I think I can kind of see why, because they're not good at what they do. They just aren't. They're not good at what they do. But they have a decent amount of videos, and the quality is good, but the content is absolute trash. And they have very a very low number of subscribers, which I'm not bashing on low subscribers. All I'm saying is that I would expect them to have more, given how visually pleasing their stream is. Like I said, it's far better than mine, but maybe it's because their content sucks so much. Yeah, you're right, YouTube punk. That's exactly what they do. And I mentioned that in the slavery apologetic videos that they did. They're like, we're going to take an in-depth look at slavery apologetics. We're going to go line for line, verse for verse. And then they just lie a bunch. They misrepresent a bunch. They twist, they misinterpret, they do all these things. And then the rest of the video is stories and anecdotes and all types of stuff. And I was excited at first because I was like, okay, we're going to get some real good there's no good apologetics, but you know what I mean. They're actually going to take their time and dish out some apologetics for slavery, but they don't. They kind of they kind of do what I do and ramble on and on and on about stuff that's off topic, like I'm doing.
Need commands like this.
Well, and also in this study here, that the Hittite code did prohibit sex or lying with goats and sheep, but they didn't prohibit it with horses or mules. And so once again, this is God giving a law or prescription to his people to set them apart from the other nation. There was this being practiced among some of the other nations in some form or fashion.
So now look at verse 20.
They were all banging sheep back in the day. Come on.
He who sacrifices to any god other than
Yeah, that's right, and they even say that the hentai. Yeah. I can't do live streams, man. This is my first solo live stream, but I can't do the hentai. I just can't I can't with you, YouTube punk. I can't with you. But yeah, they do spend a lot of time addressing all this other stuff so the viewers can feel like they just got some, and they even say that at the end of their video. They're like, we spent a long time. This is our longest series. And it's like, well, yeah, because you do what I'm doing. MIDI. I have a bad fleecing about this. Goodness gracious. Goodness gracious.
than to the Lord alone shall be utterly destroyed. And again, God is very exclusive here. Very exclusive. Here's a question, Steve. Why would God demand that people only worship him? Why would he demand you can only worship me? Because that's what he's saying.
Because he is the only God. He is the God that created everything. All these other spirits that the people are worshiping, they're not gods. If it actually is a spirit that they're worshiping, they were created by this God, Yahweh, the God that is working with them. There really truly only is one creator, one almighty, and there is no other. Everything was created by him. So it makes sense and logical sense that he should be the only one to be worshiped.
He alone.
And that's where I was saying that's a non sequitur. Because you create things, let's grant all of the arguments that God is the creator. And he's the only person the only being, whatever, that can create. That does not imply that he deserves to be worshipped. That just doesn't follow, because he's needy, a needy, insecure narcissist. Yes. Yes. And he admits it. He's the God of the Old Testament is not shy about this at all. He says it. Colonel Sanders over here actually said this already, because he is a jealous God.
alone is worthy. And he made this very clear. Remember, in this very book, we have all of the power demonstrations against the Egyptian gods and against the Egyptian magicians. And so he proved his worthiness and his power, and he has brought his
I really get the feeling that to answer how these guys are going to answer the question, does the Bible command a woman to marry her violator? They're going to answer it with, no, they're lying. Here's a bunch of other stuff. They're not, okay.
Israel out of slavery. And he says, because of that, you will only worship me. It's not bragging if it's fact. It's only the case if God really is as powerful and worthy as he is.
YouTube, punk. Why with the hentai code? I cannot get Colonel Sanders watching hentai out of my mind. Why?
Then it's not wrong to demand people recognize the worthiness. The true God is indeed worthy of our worship.
And this particular verse here is not just about believing in another God. He says sacrificing. If you're sacrificing to another God, you're serving that other God. You're doing something on behalf of that other God because you want some sort of, you're asking for something from them to provide to you, whatever. But God wants to provide the things to us and to the Israelites there. And so he wants them to come to him and ask him to provide things for them and take care of them. I mean, that's the ultimate.
Moving on to the next one. Look at verse 21 through 24.
Moving on to the next one. What were we on to move on to the next one? What are we talking about? they just moved into. Am I missing something? There, if you look in like the bar here, there is two different Mosaic laws on sexual relations, and this one is God's commands and expectations. But nothing in the video title or the description implies that this is two separate videos. Did I miss? I don't care what God's commands and expectations are. I just wanted to address.
If we look at that, those sections say that no wrongs will be allowed against strangers, widows, or orphans. And it goes through two or three things there. And it's a categorical, you shall not afflict, or some of the translations say mistreat or take advantage or wrong strangers, widows, or orphan. God expects all people.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. But hey, mine wouldn't be much different. Yeah, it's a pretty widely known fact through actual studies and documentation and academic literature that the Bible Belt is also the pornography belt. They just happen to coincide. Yeah, his browser history is probably full of chicken hentai.
To be treated well, all people to be treated well. And he takes this very seriously. These were categorical commands. You will not mistreat these people. And he says, look at what he says. He says in there, he will take the life of anybody that violates that. He says, I will take advantage of you. I will destroy you. And so God takes treating other people well, very seriously. We will not take advantage of people. We will treat morally. So these laws, there's enough of the specifics in the Mosaic law to deal with specific issues, but then there's also these categorical commands that says you will treat people well. Then moving on, verses 25 to 27 says that God prevented charging interest to poor people. He prevented charging interest to poor people. This prevented wealthy people from taking financial advantage of those who would not be able to
pay. I apologize. My video title is now misleading because their video title was incredibly misleading. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to go over this. This is boring. I don't care about God's commands and expectations, so I apologize. I was just going off of their video title and expected them to. I don't know why I was expecting them to stay on topic, but I thought they would at least tell stories about the topic, give anecdotes about relate to the topic somehow. I don't know what they're on about. I don't know if they're trying to tie this back into, if they're trying to build some type of arc that they'll just drop the bomb on us. Given all of the stories that they're going through now, this is why the Bible does not command. I doubt it. I doubt it.
pay it back or pay back the loan. And in our day, we have loan companies that are much more sophisticated than this, and they all the time take advantage of poor people. In fact, there's storefronts in our cities and our towns for the specific purpose of making loans to poor people that and charging them high interest, taking advantage of them. God says, do not do that. He will not allow it.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that if you purchase a house and you have a 30-year loan on it, that by the end of you pay all those 30 years that you've paid 3 times the value of the house? Are you saying that that's taking advantage of the owner?
Oh, not only that, but people, what ends up happening is the people who are in our day,
I mean, I'm not necessarily disagreeing here, but what are we? Mosaic laws on sexual relations. They really did combine 3 separate videos and 3 separate topics into a 32-minute long video, and in the title only addressed the one topic. Yeah, sorry. This is boring.
the less able to pay, they charge them higher and higher interest, just exactly the opposite of this, where God is saying if they're poor, don't charge the interest. What ended up happening in culture is people would only loan if you could work it back off in 7 years. Either pay back the loan or you could pay your time as a bond slave and work it off in 7 years. So even up to not all that many years ago, loan.
You know, YouTube Punk, I don't know where these guys come from. I really don't. I don't know. They've said things that would lead me to believe that they are on the right. They've said things, or that they're capitalists. They've said things that lead me to believe that they're communists. They're probably not communists in the traditional sense, but that they are that they're leftists of some sort, maybe socialists. I don't know where they stand. I don't know where they stand. I don't. He in the last things he told a story about this old communist lady who said that, you know, communism was bad, but it was good, and he said that communism is sort of like biblical slavery. He tied it all together. It was really stupid because obviously that's not the case, but he's saying that yes, he would accept this society where he doesn't have to, things are provided for him. He doesn't have stress and no. Communism was always Comrade Sanders is based though. He's I have Comrade Sanders. I haven't heard him say anything, but I think this is Glenn. Yeah, Glenn was saying things that, you know, he's pro communism, anti-interest. But then he throws in other stuff too, like traditional marriage, and I don't know. He's all over the board. And yeah, Ember, yeah, definitely a red herring. He's just, yeah, it's stories. It's filler. This is the filler part of his movie. Ninja got a source for that? I don't know why I read it like that. That's pretty racist.
Loan companies in the Western world would only loan mortgages for 7 years.
And why was 7 years significant in
The red herring.
regards to the Mosaic Law? What happened after the 7th year?
After the 7th year was the Sabbath year that we'll get to here in a little bit, and all the loans had to be forgiven.
Yeah, so it makes sense that you wouldn't want to loan the person something more than what they would be able to work off in less than that deal, because then you'd have to forgive the rest of the loan.
And what that did was keep people from.
Okay, I don't know. I don't care about any of this. I'm very much uninterested in going through things that God may or may not have said about various rules on interest, and I thought this video was going to be about yeah, that's right, Ember. Yeah, they were probably like 14 cents in today's wages. Is there anything that we can go over of theirs? I brought up a whole live stream for this. and it's just simply off topic. And now my title is going to be off topic. We did the slavery, honor, murder, adultery, redemption, guilty, I'm jealous, Moses. Do they have anything maybe about like the flood? Oh, they started with Exodus. What did the comments say? They have little to no comments. You know what? Hey, that's actually good. Because there is one comment. So on that video, there's 0 comments. Like I said, their production value does far exceed the quality of their content. They have no comments. They only have 62 subscribers, which again, I'm not, people do the best they can, and these guys are doing the same thing I'm doing. They're pushing their way through the YouTube world. But given their production value, I did expect them to have more. And they do have a good amount of videos, but very little engagement. Yeah, their engagement is not great. No comments. But that being said, they do have, if you guys want a little bit of entertainment, go to their part 3 of their slavery. Hold on. Yeah, part 3.
Take these sessions.
And read these comments, because Nick Brazing, he really took him to task. And I won't read all this because it's a lot. It's a lot that Nick wrote. All of this. He really called them out on a lot of their stuff. He took the time to write all of this. Oh, did they reply? No, that's me. He took the time to write all this, and they tried in the next section, they try their best to address it, but then they just basically say the same things that they said in the video. So this is their response, all of this writing. Well, Nick comes back with another long reply that gives Bible verses, and after all of this engagement, that's a lot. And then Nick Brazing, who I'm trying to get to do a live with, after all this engagement, they just stopped responding, because he really did take him to task, and it's pretty funny. And this was he made this comment 8 days ago, so they've had plenty of time to respond, and they just didn't, because he really did call him out on a lot of stuff, and it's pretty great. But yeah, their comments are not the best, not as horrible as some people. And I did thumbs down their video, because their videos are grossly immoral. I usually don't do that, but I feel like I'm just sticking it to them by giving them the thumbs down. Do they have any shorts? I don't think these guys are. No, I don't want to. I don't think these guys are shorts people. Oh well. They don't have anything else that's really good. Yeah. Give them a thumbs down. No, don't do that. Only if you want to do it, but don't do. I don't know why. When I get thumbs down, why do Christians have so many standards? Christians don't have standards. I mean, they have as many or as little standards as anybody else would have. It's not like they're just they're just people. They're just dudes. Can we trust the Bible translations? That one might be interesting, because they just went on about how those translators got it wrong. Yeah, standards. How to treat the poor. See, they do have a lot of videos. This is why I'm surprised by their low views. 66 views. This is on par with my views. I just thought they would do better than what they do, but they don't. God has a plan. Moses rejected. Yeah, I don't think anything's good coming out of this. Is it wrong to repeatedly submit to sin? Are all sins equal? Should a Christian be afraid of demonic activity? I always thought it might be interesting to do a video series, and I've been trying to put this together in my head, and I think I'm gonna do it. I'm going to actively try to get possessed by a demon, and I'm gonna document. Of course, it's all in fun and games, but I'm going to I'm gonna look it up and see how to avoid demonic possession, because there are a lot of videos on it. And then I'm gonna do the opposite of what it says to do, and I'm gonna really try to get possessed by a demon and see what happens. Well, I I guess we'll just end it, because that was really boring. It was really bad. I mean, I covered all of the meat of their argument. I covered in the first video. This is the second video, their first video, but I thought I was gonna have to break it up into two parts. But I covered everything in the first video, and then they went on about something else, which is really, really unfortunate. So I think I'll just end it. Thank you everyone who stopped by. I really appreciate it. They need that, yeah, yeah, yeah. He's no better than Cameron's no better than these guys. Um, he's no better than these guys. I think it's because he's got the look going down for him. He's not 104 kind of Colonel Sandersy. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I'm feeling pretty pumped. I got a lot of water in me. I moved my setting. I got kicked out of the basement by mom, and I'm just kidding. I moved upstairs. I like this environment a lot better than the dark, dingy basement. Um, let's go. I got a bunch of things saved in my watch later, but I don't think Gabe the preacher shows up and the manifestations begin. That one might not be so YouTube friendly. I think it's gonna be funny because this guy's out here doing like a street preaching thing, and a bunch of people. I don't know if you can see the thumbnail, but they come up and start like twerking and just trying to shut this guy down. Um, 5 fatal flaws in transgender ideology. That one's gonna take a long time. Their video is an hour and 13 minutes. And you like dungeons? What do you mean, Ember? What kind of dungeons? Internet etiquette guy. No. If anybody has any recommendations, send them my way, because I don't. I'm still relatively new to the YouTube atheist religion, everything. I don't know a lot of apologists. I don't know a lot of atheist YouTubers. I just kind of wait till YouTube feeds me something. I always use YouTube for as I'm working. I got premium, so it'll just play in the background. So I listen to documentaries and things like that. I haven't done I don't know a lot of these names, like Matt Powell. People suggested Matt Powell. I'd never heard of him before. Dunk on Nutters. Yeah, that sounds fun. But yeah, the 5 fatal flaws in transgender ideology, featuring Frank Turek. I'm gonna do that one, but oh, my bad, Ember. I missed that. Um, yeah, I had my I had my little thing set up down in my basement. In my basement, I have it's where I have a mini woodworking shop down there, and that's kind of my domain, if you will. But it was just getting too humid, and and then I move upstairs, where I didn't think about it, but it's summer, so it's like 95 degrees in this room, because this is the office. Yeah, I moved up here and I didn't think about air conditioning, so I'm kind of sweating, which is why I've gone through like a gallon of water sitting up here, but I'll figure that out later. Prepare yourself. So this is going to be an anti-gay one. The days of Lot has come. And then you'll read all the comments. Vadi Buchanan. This is Vadi Buchanan. Bach. I always say Buchanan. Bachman. He's super homophobic. He's pretty disgusting. We are praying to God and it's moving. I don't know why I saved some of this. The dark side of LGBTQ. See, all these, the reason I haven't done these is because they're so long. They're so freaking long. Yeah, I don't have any short ones that we can just kind of go over real quick. All right. Yeah. Well, hey, I really appreciate everybody coming and hanging out. I'm gonna go ahead and end this, and I'll try to have a better one next time. But thank you for stopping by, everyone. I appreciate it.